Okay, here's a self-help video. If you are struggling on the assignments, you got x to the power of 2 minus 5x plus 6. This is problem number 1. Over the expression x squared minus 4 times x to the power of 2 plus 3x plus 2. Okay, multiplication problem, there's just 3 steps, okay? The denominators do not have to match to multiply. It doesn't matter if they do or not. So you have a minus and a plus. We need to try to factor that into 2 parentheses. Minus here. Okay. All right. Rip off. I'm going to rip off a second sheet of scratch paper. And you need to factor the expressions, okay? So here's this first one. X to the second minus 5x plus 6, okay? There's 3 terms. The GCF is just 1, okay? So we don't have to do the GCF. You can make a box if you want, but when it's 1, it's kind of pointless to do. Okay, so ABC, that 1 times 6 is 6, positive. So it's a negative times a negative. Could also be positive, positive. It'll be negative times negative because that's negative. So we're adding the factors to try to get 5, 1, and 6. That does not add to negative 5. Divide by 2, get 3, boom. Okay. Now A is 1, so you can forget about the 1 and just rewrite it as x minus 2, x minus 3. Then I cross that expression out and I replace it with these 2 parentheses, x minus 2 times x minus 3. Okay, now x squared plus 3x plus 2. Okay, so that's 3 terms. And GCF here would be 1, okay? And then ABC, 1 times 2 is 2, okay? So it's 2, that's a negative times a negative, or it could be positive times positive. We're trying to add to positive 3, so it would probably be a positive times a positive, and 1 and 2 does a trick, 1 plus 1 plus 2. So A is 1, so again I can just write x plus 1 times x plus 2. It's when A is not a 1 where you need to make 4 parentheses and divide down. So cross that out and rewrite it as x plus 1 times x plus 2. Alright, now x squared minus 4, that's 2 terms, okay? So I would see if it has a GCF. Then I would see if we have a difference of perfect squares. GCF's 1, okay, not with x, so a 1 isn't worth doing. Now with the dots, take the 1 away. You don't need it. X times x, and then 2 times 2. So it'd be x plus 2, x minus 2. So rewrite that. Okay, and then x squared minus 2x minus 3. Okay, GCF is 1, okay. Okay, so ABC, 1 times negative 3 is negative 3, so that's a positive times a negative. To multiply to a negative 3, the 2 factors have to be positive and negative. Now your A is 1, so you get rid of it. And if you divide by 1, you get 3. You're adding to get to negative 2. And that does it right there. It's just like first semester. X plus 1 times x minus 3. So that's all you're doing. You're factoring those and rewriting them in multiple parentheses, okay? So then what you do, just rewrite the whole problem in 1 fraction at a time, so you can do that. So you get x minus 2 times x minus 3, x plus 1 times x plus 2. Bottom. Okay, then your parentheses, you cross out, do you have an x minus 2 on bottom? You do. You can simplify by crossing those out. Do you have x minus 3 on bottom? You do. X plus 1, you got that on bottom? Nope. X plus 2, you got that on bottom? Yep. So we have parentheses x plus 1. I jump down here now. Now check for outside factors. It doesn't appear we have any, so that's the answer. X plus 1 over x minus 1. Okay, next problem is another multiplication problem. We have 2x to the 4th, y to the 2nd. This is number 2. Over 10 times, and then you have 5y to the 3rd over x to the 3rd. Now, we don't have to do any factoring over here because there's no plus or minus in that expression, okay? We don't have to factor here. There's no plus or minus with that expression, so I don't need to rewrite these and try to factor them. Same with that, same with that. So I'm going to cross that out because we don't have to make any parentheses. You can't. So what do? Well, what you do is you go across. 2 times 5 is 10. X to the 4th. Y second times y to the 3rd is y to the 5th. Bottom we got 10 with x to the 3rd. Well, 10 and 10 have a greatest common factor at 10, so if I divided them both by 10, it would be 1 over 1. Well, I can just delete the 10s in. Then on the x third, we get rid of the x third, subtract 3. That's x to the 1st. So the final answer is x to the 1st, or x times y to the 5th. So again, with minuses and pluses, we put parentheses and factor. Without minuses and pluses in the expressions, we don't factor, we just simplify the outsides. Okay, now number 3. Now it's adding. That's a totally different operation than multiplying, as you well know. Negative 3x over x squared minus 9 plus 4x minus 3. Now what you do here, you compare the bottoms. They have to be the same. You have to get the bottoms so that they match. Currently they definitely don't. Okay. So we need to do an LCD, and I need to come up with 2 new fractions. Now the only thing you do with the tops on these problems is see if you have to put parentheses. You don't. There's no plus or minus in that. So you just drop it. And that right there. You drop them. Even if they had pluses and minuses, you put them in parentheses, but you wouldn't try to factor them. Now, how about the bottom? We have x to the 2nd minus 9, okay? We need to put that in parentheses, and we need to put that in parentheses because there's minuses. So let's see if we can factor x squared minus 9. 2 terms, so 2 terms is GCF. And then seeing if you can write it as a difference of perfect squares. GCF's 1. Okay, you wouldn't do x, so that's a waste. So x times x, 3 times 3. Okay, so you rewrite this, okay, as x plus 3 times x minus 3. Now go to the other one, x minus 3. There's a minus with 2 terms, so GCF, and then DOPS. The GCF would just be 1, so we would not do it, and that's not a DOPS. You don't even have x to the 2nd, so you can't do anything. It stays the same. Now, what do I have for common factors in the denominator? Well, we got x plus 3, we got x minus 3, and then we got x minus 3, which I've already written down. So x plus 3, I got 1 and 0. So I need to raise this fraction up by an x plus 3 factor, and then you got to do the same thing to the top. Now x minus 3 is your 1 to 1. Okay, that's good. And now with the denominators are exactly the same. So you make one fraction, get rid of the other one, it doesn't matter, and you now have x plus 3 times x minus 3. Now you need to simplify the top. We have negative 3x plus 4 times x plus 3. Okay, the negative 3x doesn't have to be multiplied. Okay, so I have that. I got to take 4 times 1x and 4 times 3. So that's 4x, that's 12. So these go together, that would be 1x plus 12. Okay. And then I see if I can factor that, which I can't because a GCF is just 1. And that's not a difference of perfect squares. Okay. So put it in parentheses and that's the answer. So again, when you're adding, you have to get the denominators to be the same. Okay, next problem, last one, number 4. We have 2x over x to the second minus 1x minus 2 plus negative 4x minus 2. So again, with adding, okay, adding's totally, you don't just make 3 lines, okay, and try to cross stuff out. That's not how adding works. Adding, you need the denominators to match. LCD is what that's called. Right now, they do not match. So look at your denominators. Actually, the tops, just forget about them for a second. That's 3 terms, parenthesize, that's 2 terms, parenthesize, and see if you can rewrite those in factored form. You have to. So I have x to the second minus 1x minus 2. GCF and table. GCF, it would just be 1. 1 times negative 2 is negative 2. So it's a positive times a negative, and we're adding to try to get to negative 1. 2 divided by 1 is 2. That makes negative 1 right there. So my A is 1. If your A is 1, that's good. I just need to write an XX parentheses plus 1 minus 2. So you replace that with x plus 1 times x minus 2. Now x minus 2, that's 2 terms. I mean, would there be a GCF? I think it would be just 1, so we wouldn't do it because dividing by 1's silly. Okay. Then I see if I have a difference of perfect squares, which you don't. Okay. X isn't even to the second power. Okay, so that really stays the same. If I cross out both of them, that's the same thing I roll with. Now, what do we do at the tops? Just drop them down. Now, do you need to put parentheses? No, you don't. Okay, you can if you want, but there's no plus or minus within that 2x expression. Same here. So LCD, we've got x plus 1, x minus 2. That's what I have on the bottom. So that's what I have to worry about on the bottom. So I have 1 and 0. So we need them each so they have 1. So I bring in another factor of x plus 1, and it's an equivalent fraction as long as I bring it to the top. X minus 2 is I'm already good, 1 to 1. Okay, so we have our common denominator. It's set. Cross out the other one. Once you have a common one, you just need to look at one of them. So now I write the top as one single expression. We have 2x plus negative 4 times x plus 1. Okay, so 2x doesn't have to be multiplied, but I need to distribute my negative 4. So I'm going to take negative 4 times 1x and negative 4 times 1. So combine your x's, that makes negative 2x minus 4. Okay. Now see if the expression negative 2x minus 4 can be factored. I mean, it does have 2 terms. Let's see if we can factor that. okay? So GCF, and then DOPS, difference in perfect squares. 2 and 4, I think you can divide by 2. You would need to do a -2. You cannot divide by x because of that. So I factor out -2. And that's going to be 1x or x, 1x, and then plus 2. You do not need that 1 there anymore, okay, if it's a 1. And that's not a DOPS, so get rid of it. But you need to rewrite this now as -2 times x plus 2. Okay, now if I have an x plus 2 on bottom, I'm going to cross out those out. They cancel, but I don't. So that's the answer.